Next, remarks from retired California Judge James Gray, an advocate for the legalization of marijuana. He also supports changes in U.S. drug laws in general. Before serving as a trial judge in Orange County, California, Mr. Gray also served as a federal prosecutor and ran as a libertarian for the U.S. Senate in 2004. The Institute for Policy Studies hosted this event. It's an hour.
On who we are. IPS has been around since 1963. We've been at the progressive forefront of many social movements, including those for the civil rights movement in the 60s, against the Vietnam War, anti-apartheid work in the 70s and 80s, anti-corporate globalization. We've been involved in the anti-war movement in Iraq. And so we are part of that, I guess, professional left, the disgruntled professional left that Robert Gibbs mentioned. And I don't usually wear my politics on my sleeve like that, but this is the point I want to raise today, that we are a progressive institution, left of center, and today we have someone from the other side of the aisle here to talk with us about drug policy. Judge James Gray is hails from Orange County, California. He's a conservative, Republican / libertarian. Just give you a little background on Judge Gray. He received his undergraduate degree from UCLA in 1966 and his law degree from USC in 1971. And he also served in the Peace Corps in Costa Rica from 1966 to 68. From 1972 to 75, Judge Gray was Staff Advocate General and Criminal Defense Attorney for the U.S. Navy's JAG.
Keep it short, son.
And he has been a prosecutor. He's also been a judge in California and was elevated by Governor Duke Majan to the Orange County Superior Court in 1989. And he retired after 25 years on the bench in January of 2009. He is also the author of the books Why Our Drug Laws Have Failed and What We Can Do About It, a judicial indictment of the war on drugs, published by Temple University Press in 2001, and as well as A Voter's Handbook, Effective Solutions to America's Problems by Forum Press, published this year. He's also run for Congress, ran for the House from California in 1998 as a Republican, and for the Senate from California in 2004 as a Libertarian. So, if you want more information on Judge Gray, please go to his website, judgejimgray.com. And to start this off, Judge, let me ask you, what's a nice conservative man like you doing in a liberal hotbed like this?
Well, actually, I'm going to correct that a little bit because libertarians are classic liberals as well as classic conservatives. And this issue, which I came out against our nation's drug policy, actually did something very unusual as a sitting judge, held a press conference in April of 1992 saying, based upon my experience as a prosecutor, as a judge, what we're doing just isn't working. You know, what we've been doing is, I've watched in my own court churning low-level drug offenders through the system for no good purpose, even arresting, convicting, incarcerating big-time drug dealers. Does that mean that heroin, cocaine, marijuana, whatever, are no longer available in that city? No, it just means that somebody else sees that as an employment opportunity. So I have gone around the country talking about this issue, trying to tell people it's okay to discuss drug policy. Just because we address this issue does not mean we condone drug use or abuse. It just means that there has to be a better way of doing it. And so to counter what you said, I've actually received, not many people can say this, I've received a standing ovation from basically giving the same talk both to the ACLU on the one hand and the Young Republicans of Orange County on the other.
And I think this is one of the reasons that makes this subject so interesting, when people from all across the political spectrum can come together and reject the war on drugs. Change can't be that far away.
Sanho, I don't mean to exaggerate, and I'm not, but this is the most critical issue facing our country today. That is drug policy. And it sounds like an exaggeration, but the more you get into it, the more you see that drug policy, this failed and hopeless policy, which I call the biggest failed policy in the history of the United States of America, second only to slavery. It has its tentacles in pretty much everything that's going wrong in the world today. Foreign policy, I mean, look at Mexico, Afghanistan, Bolivia, all the rest. You look at our children, you know, we are putting our children in harm's way because of drug prohibition for two really important reasons. One is, ask them, and I do, anyone under the age of 21, ask them, what is easier for you to get, marijuana, if you want to, or alcohol? And they'll tell you, no, it's easier for me to get marijuana, or in fact I see numbers of people in the audience shaking their heads, usually the younger ones. It's just easier. Why? Because the alcohol is regulated and controlled by the government, and the illegal drugs are controlled by illegal drug dealers, and they don't ask for ID, do they? And then the second thing is, if I am an adult drug dealer, ask yourself, how much risk-taking can I buy for $50 in cash from a 15, 16, 17-year-old boy or girl in the inner city or anywhere else? And the answer is quite a bit. And as a result, I can recruit all of the young people I want to use them in my drug distribution business. Why would I do that? That's easy. They're a cheap source of labor. And then, as soon as their reliability is established, I will trust them to go out and sell small amounts of drugs in their communities. Why would I do such a scurrilous thing? That's easy too. More money for them, more money for me. Then ask yourself this question. If you have a 15, 16-year-old selling drugs in his or her community, who is he or she going to sell to? People like me? Nonsense. They're going to sell to their 15, 16-year-old peers, thus recruiting more children to the same lifestyle of drug usage and drug abuse that we're trying to get them away from. And it is caused by drug prohibition. We couldn't do it worse if we tried. So let's understand. The drugs are here to stay. Yes, they can be harmful. Yes, they certainly can sometimes be addictive, but they're here to stay. So let's stop moralizing about this issue and start managing it, like a lot of countries really in Western Europe are using. And if you don't think that they're not here to stay, understand, you all know who Charles Manson is. Charles Manson was moved from Corcoran State Prison in California several years ago now because he was found to be selling illegal drugs from his prison cell, and he was in solitary confinement. So if we can't keep drugs out of prison, and we can't, how do we believe that we can keep them off the streets of any town or city in our country? And the answer is we can't. Because people will always take even large criminal justice risks for selling small amounts of drugs for large amounts of money. I mean, it's going to happen. So let's recognize that fact, regulate them, control them, make them less available for children. Yes, tax them. You know, that's not a reason for doing all of this, but it's certainly a nice byproduct. And we can reduce the harms that can and will be caused by the presence of these drugs in our communities. That's where we should go. And there are lots of ways that we can do that. Most people recognize drug policy isn't working. You can ask anyone in this room, throw a net over anyone in a shopping mall in the United States, and 80 to 85% will all agree what we're doing isn't working, but they don't know we have options. Well, that's our fault. That's the media's fault. We need to let people know that there are better ways of doing this. A medical option works. You know, Portugal. Why don't people know this? Portugal, we have a representative from the Cato Institute. They looked at what happened in this Western European country. Because in 2001, Portugal decriminalized all drugs. Why? Why did they do this? They were really smart. They looked around and found that they had the largest drug problems of any other country in Western Europe, and they commissioned an apolitical group to look into this and give them recommendations. What did this group find? They said, you know something? We have two phenomenons going on here. One is that we have people who are drug addicted, have drug problems, but they're afraid of their own government. Why? Because if they bring their problems to the government will punish them. So they take them underground. Logical. And number two, they found that the government is spending so much money trying to investigate, prosecute, incarcerate drug users that they don't have any money left for drug treatment. So they recommended that they decriminalize all drugs, and they did that in 2001. What happened? Well, the Cato Institute came out with a survey in, 2009, showing that drug usage pretty much remained the same. If anything, if I read it right, it went down like 0.5% or something like that. So basically it remained the same, but problem drug usage went down by 50%. Why? Because of that very phenomenon that they found. Anybody that has a problem drug usage knows it. They know it. And now, since their government is more working with them, they won't punish them, they've taken their drug problems to the government for assistance. And drug treatment is in, it's working, and then you have fewer people selling drugs, because why? Most people that sell drugs, the lower level, are those that are selling to support their own habits. But now that their usage is more under control, they have fewer people selling the drugs, etc. And the other thing they found, take note, children's beginning to use these drugs has been decreasing. Why? Because the glamour's out of it. Why should I take these drugs and go see a doctor? That's not very glamorous. And so children are not beginning this drug usage where before they did. So these are things that we should take hope from, we should understand, and we should adopt. We should go with those programs, just like Sanho you've been talking about.
So I'm curious, as a judge, when did you first start questioning the war on drugs? How did you come to this position? Was there a particular tipping point or case?
There actually was. I was on the bench